Welcome to this short introductory lesson on types of medieval castle. The aims of this presentation will be to identify key vocabulary related to castles, to explain the advantages and disadvantages of different castle types, and to evaluate the suitability of medieval castle types in different situations. There will also be an optional research task that you could do at the end. Look at this example of a modern home. This happens to be my house. Actually, that's not true. But the thing is, why would someone want to live in a house like this? It might be about comfort, yes, but what individual person really needs all of those deck chairs and that enormous swimming pool? So much about this home is about status. It's showing off the wealth and power of the owner of this home. Medieval castles are very much the same. What is often misunderstood about medieval castles is their function. Yes, they were defensive buildings, but very often they were just as much about status, about intimidating the local people, and about showing the lordship and power of the person or people who lived there. The idea that castles were drafty and awful places to live is true in certain respects, but very often castles were luxurious for their time, and you could be treated much more like a king there than anywhere else in the country. After all, an Englishman's home is his castle. But, just as people like to show off their status today, castle types had different status too. Some of them were more practical, and some of them were more for showing off. All of them were formidable. Let's look at the basic types of castle now. Here are the main types of castle. On the diagram you can see the simple motte and bailey. If you studied the Anglo-Saxons and Normans, you will know that this is the main type of castle introduced by William the Conqueror when he was trying to quickly and rapidly control the kingdom. They could be built very quickly, in a matter of a few days or weeks. They consist of a large earthen mound called the motte, not to be confused with the moat. They have a bailey next to them, which is an area where the support buildings, halls, kitchens, stables, etc. are kept, and a main refuge at the top of the motte. This is known as the keep. Here it's shown as a wooden fort. Some motte and baileys were built in wood and then later replaced in stone. Others were built in stone right away. Others were never rebuilt at all and simply crumbled away. They can be found all over the United Kingdom. Next we have the stone keep. This dispenses with the motte and instead has a much larger keep. The keep is the main stronghold of the castle, but also serves as luxurious living accommodation for the people inside as well. Lastly, we have the concentric castle, the most expensive, the most impressive, and the most complicated of all. The word concentric means one inside the other. Think of it like circles, one inside the other. Notice that a concentric castle has got one set of walls inside another set of walls. So any enemy that was able to get through the outer set of walls would then have to contend with an even stronger wall on the inside before finally getting to the keep in the middle. Truly formidable stuff. Now these are the tasks that you have to complete. Firstly, identify which castle is which. Add the correct name to each diagram. If you're unable to get your own copy of this diagram, you could sketch out some quick sketches of your own. What pros and cons do stone and wood castles have in terms of their building materials? Remember, there are certain advantages to using wood, and there are certain difficulties to using stone. Add 2 to 4 labels to different parts of the castle using this vocabulary. As a challenge, how might local geography and geology affect the castle types that were built? Consider your own local area. Which castle type would likely be most suitable where you are? Perhaps you have a local castle and you can consider which type it best fits. Fifthly, which castle would be hardest to attack and beat? Explain why using examples from your pictures. Consider also the weapons available for use by medieval armies. You can pause the video now, sketch out your drawings, or find your own copies of this diagram. Notice that this one has been taken from Encyclopedia Britannica, and you can start the task now. Pause the video and press play when you're ready to continue. Done? Alright, let's have a look at some real examples. This is Beaumaris Castle in Anglesey, Wales. It was begun in 1295 and never finished. Basically, Edward I was conquering Wales at this time, and he built a whole series of castles around the Welsh coast. This particular one was so ambitious, he never actually finished building it. Can you identify what type of castle it is? Did you say concentric? Because if you did, you'd be right. This is a concentric castle. Notice that it's got one large set of walls inside another. Let's have a look at another type of castle. This is Pickering Castle in North Yorkshire. It was built around 1070. Originally built out of wood, it was later replaced in stone with a large shell keep at the top of the mound. It was built near to the main road to York and near to a river valley. Can you identify what type of castle this one is? Did you say stone keep? Well, it does have a stone keep, but it's not strictly a stone keep castle. Instead, this is a motte and bailey, but the bailey in this case surrounds the motte in the middle. The designs did change from castle to castle. This particular castle was originally built as part of William the Conqueror's harrying of the north, in which he razed down and obliterated northern settlements. This was a reprisal for a rebellion against him between 1069 and 1070. The mark on the landscape is still felt to this day, and these castles are a reminder of that. Let's have a look at another. This is Rochester Castle in Kent. It was built around 1127. What type of castle is it? Well, there's a bit of a clue, isn't there? That enormous stone building. It is indeed a stone keep. The eagle-eyed among you might notice that one of the towers on that keep is round while the others are square. This is because in 1215 King John attacked rebels who were hiding out in that castle. He used a mine, which is a big tunnel dug underneath the tower and then burnt down, in order to collapse 1/4 of the castle. When it was rebuilt using more modern technology, and they built it with a round tower which was harder to undermine. You see, you always go for the corners when you're undermining a castle, and a round tower doesn't have any corners. Notice its position near to the modern bridges. The medieval bridge was much closer to the castle, and it controlled a vital river crossing. What about this one? This is Launceston Castle in Cornwall, although the locals call it Lanson Castle. 'Twas built around 1067, originally out of wood. Okay, the angle might be playing a few tricks on you here, but can you see what type of castle it is? There are a few clues. It is indeed a motte and bailey. This one here was later rebuilt in stone with an impressive shell keep and keep tower at the top of the motte. The date is also a bit of a clue here. This castle would have originally been built very hastily. 1067 is only 1 year after the Battle of Hastings, and so this castle was built to help secure the local area. On to our final example. This is Dover Castle in Kent, built on the cliffs overlooking Dover Harbour. It's very near to France, a traditional enemy of England. There are an awful lot of phases of construction here. It was built around 1181, or at the very least the main tower and keep in the middle were, on earlier Saxon fortifications, which in turn were built on Roman and Iron Age defences. It was strengthened and modified by the Tudors and during the Napoleonic Wars, and it was used during World War II as well, and it was even turned into a nuclear bunker during the Cold War. That's almost 2,000 years of continuous military occupation on the same site. Pretty impressive. But what sort of castle is it? Well, it's got a stone keep, doesn't it? It's also got a mound in the middle, which is a bit like a motte. And yet, if you notice, it's got one wall set inside another. Well, the truth is that it's largely a combination of all of them, although it's not a true motte and bailey. That mound in the middle is actually part of the original Iron Age defences. You can see the Saxon church in the middle is built on top of it, and so therefore the Saxon church must come later to be built on top of the earlier mound. The point is, though, Dover Castle is arguably the earliest concentric castle in Britain. It also includes features of the stone keep. Henry III himself stayed at this castle, and it was a result of his embarrassment of having had a visit from the King of France and not having a proper castle to put him in when he came. Let's move on. We're now going to apply our knowledge of castles to decide which type of castle would be most appropriate in a variety of given situations. I have selected 3 real historical characters, which I will attempt to portray by using offensive regional accents. Sorry about that, hope you can forgive me. Let's consider the circumstances of our first character, Lord Number 1, Robert, Count of Mortain. My name is Robert, Count of Mortain. I've invaded with the Normans in 1066, and I'm a veteran of the Battle of Hastings. However, Duke William of Normandy has given me land to say thank you for my service in the wars, but I am very scared of the local people and I need a castle to try and protect me. What I want is this: a castle to protect me and my loyal knights and act as a base for our operations in the area. I want to be able to control the local people. This might be through actually scaring and intimidating them. This is what I have got nearby. I have lots of woodland, but I have no quarry within easy distance of where I am located. I do not have much money. You see, Duke William has instead rewarded me with land. So, I am looking for a castle that can be built quickly. Which sort of castle should I build? Choose now. Well, what do you think? The castle that Robert Count of Mortain built was Lanson or Launceston Castle in Cornwall. This is one of several castles that Robert built. He originally built Launceston Castle out of wood, but later was able to bring in stone when the situation had calmed down and had been secured, and it was rebuilt in stone later on by other lords who lived there. However, Launceston Castle would have been built quickly and would have provided a very intimidating presence to the local people, preventing them from even daring to rise up against Norman rule. Let's consider a second example. Lord number 2 is Bishop Gundulf. There he is. Well, I say that's him. That's actually a statue of him outside of a particular cathedral, but I'll say no more about that just for now. My name is Bishop Gundulf. I am not only a bishop, but also a politician and an expert architect. And I am a friend of the king's. Some of my buildings are incredibly famous already. You might have even heard of some of them. However, I have been tasked with building a castle for my own protection, as well as that of the king's men. Here's what I need. I need a castle to protect and control an important bridge, town and cathedral. Indeed, a cathedral is the seat of a bishop, and that is my main place of work. This is what I have at my disposal. I have plenty of money, direct from the king and from the church, but I do not have an unlimited amount. After all, I am not the king himself. I have some time to build it, but not that much time. The cathedral is already in existence, as are the bridges and roads surrounding it, but the danger is quite pressing. Should there be a rebellion, there will be need for a castle. I have plenty of quality stone that I can bring from a French quarry outside Caen in Normandy. This is very fine stone that gives a both beautiful appearance and great strength to the buildings. So consider my circumstances. What sort of castle would be the best to build? Select your type of castle now. Right, thanks Bishop Gundulf. What do we think? What should he build? Maybe you chose a Motte and Bailey. He does seem a little push for time. However, if he's able to get this stone in and he has more money than that, perhaps he could be a little bit more ambitious. He might not have room for a concentric castle. However, a commanding stone keep would be appropriate. Indeed, Bishop Gundulf was the designer and builder of the original castle at Rochester. He also designed and built the Tower of London. So, quite a famous guy by all accounts. Let's move on to our final example. King Edward I, otherwise known as Longshanks for his great height. A pretty fearsome and formidable character. Let's see what he has to say for himself. Right, I've got a fearsome reputation, as you all know. I'm tall, I am scary, but I am also one of the greatest military commanders of my age, so you'd best behave. Here's what I need. I need many castles, not just the one, to fight and control the Welsh. They're a rebellious lot, and I've only just finished conquering them. They, you might say understandably, hate me, so I need castles that will both strike fear into their hearts and provide me with secure bases for both me and my men. I need these castles to be the most advanced and terrifying pieces of military engineering that these rebels will ever have seen in their lives. This is what I have at my disposal. I have an almost unlimited amount of money. After all, I am the king, Should I run out of money, I will just demand more in taxes, or take it off the local people. I have plenty of stone and skilled builders. I can take them from all over England and even further afield. After all, I have the money to pay them. And if necessary, I have the rest of my reign to build them. And if it isn't completed then my son will carry on these castles in my name. Time is not the object. I am looking for a permanent presence in Wales, one that will crush their rebellious spirit for years and generations to come. So, my advisers, which castle or castles should I build? All right, chill out, Edward. Thanks for that. So, what do we think? What are we going to advise Edward to build? Well, he could build Motte and Baileys. If he needs lots of them, they could be built very quickly. But are they really going to scare the Welsh? Probably not. Well, what about stone keep castles? They're pretty terrifying. Well, you could, I suppose, but if money is no object, how about we build a series of concentric castles? Beaumaris Castle was just one such castle built by Edward I at this time. Others included Harlech, Conway, and many, many others. Have a look at a map of Welsh castles if you can find one online, and you'll see just how many that Edward built. Their presence now lends a certain romance to many of these Welsh places, but at the time they were symbols of English oppression, and it's quite understandable why the Welsh didn't like having them there. Let's conclude. We'll check our understanding now. Almost all castles went out of use around 400 years ago in the 1600s. Why do you think this might have been? Had wars and weapons changed too much? If so, in what ways? Perhaps these images might help you. Were the rich feeling safer by this time, and they did not see so much need for the use of castles? Well, why don't we use them today? Or do we? Or do we have another equivalent? Firstly, summarise why were castles built. Spend around 1 minute and 30 seconds on this. Then give a specific example of how castles were used. A few sentences in 45 seconds will be perfectly sufficient for this. And finally, just sum up how castles were used in a single word or phrase. Pause the video now and spend a short amount of time based on the stopwatch to complete those tasks. Well, the video might well conclude there. However, I've got an optional research task for you. I'll just explain it. Castle case studies. Here are 4 castles that are ideal for comparison. There's Corfe Castle in Dorset, Helmsley Castle in North Yorkshire, Lewes Castle in Sussex, and Rochester Castle in Kent. 3 of these castles are stone keep castles: Corfe Castle, Helmsley Castle, and Rochester Castle. 2 of them were destroyed at the end of the English Civil War. Corfe Castle and Helmsley Castle are both ruined because they were deliberately slighted or blown up to prevent them being used in battle again. Lewes Castle is something of an odd one out. Lewes Castle is a Motte and Bailey castle, but one with a difference. It had 1 Bailey and 2 Mottes. Perhaps you'll be able to find out why this was. Feel free, if you want, to choose another castle, perhaps one that is nearby to you. Here's how you could lay out your research task. You could lay out a poster much like this. A big title at the top, The Use of Castles in War. And then details of the first castle that you've researched. Some basic background. Who built it? When? Why? Where? The main features of its design and construction. What type of castle was it? What materials were used? How was it used in war, if at all, and why? Details of its military use and its role in the local community. And when it went out of use, if at all, and why. You could illustrate it. I've used Corfe Castle here. Then you have the same for Castle 2. You can illustrate this one here as well. I've chosen Rochester. And then you can make your comparison in the middle. What similarities are there between these castles? What differences are there? And then come to an overall conclusion. The most useful castle for a historian studying the use of castles in war is... and then consider your answer and explain it. That's an ideal poster layout. Like I say, that's an extra bit of a research task if you're interested in this and you want to extend your learning further, but here ends our basic introduction to castle types in the Middle Ages. I hope that you found that useful. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel where new content is arriving all the time. Many thanks and goodbye.